Hey, okay, so I want to talk to you really quickly about DEMI application. So a lot of people will purchase DEMI correctors with the intent of using them like they do a traditional concealer or color corrector, but they're actually quite different. You have to treat them like a whole separate thing. And when you use DEMI correctors, you need to kind of erase everything you know about color correcting, and you need to have a fresh perspective. You also need to have a lot of patience and be willing to do a lot of practice with it, because it's something that a lot of people don't get down on their first few tries. So right now, I'm not gonna get into a deep dive about DEMI applications specifically, but I do wanna go over a couple of techniques that might be helpful for some of you that are struggling a little bit to figure out how to use DEMI correctors correctly. So I still need to color correct right here underneath my eyes. I also need to color correct over here where I have some melasma spots, and I'm gonna approach both of these a little bit different in terms of how I apply my DEMI corrector. Now, one of the most important things when it comes to DEMI application is having the right tools. And this brush right here, this one's called the spot brush. This is probably the one that I recommend the most. There are other amazing brushes. I really like the bright brush and some of the other ones that we have for DEMI. But if you're just getting started and you're wanting to keep things really simple, this brush is an absolute essential. So like all of Seint's brushes, the spot brush is dual-ended, and on this side, they've got a smaller, denser, more pointed end, which is perfect for that pinpoint precision that you often need with DEMI application. And then on the other side, it's a little bit longer, fluffier, and not quite as densely packed, so it provides a little bit of a lighter and softer application. So depending on what you're addressing, your application and your technique is going to be a little bit different. So the darkness underneath my eyes starts darker and more concentrated in the corner, and then it starts to spread out, but as it spreads out, it gets a little bit lighter and just kind of disperses more. Whereas if you look at my melasma spot, it is one very specific spot where all of the pigment is concentrated. So when I'm applying DEMI to my under eye, I'm gonna start in the very corner, and I'm gonna concentrate that color right there in the corner where that color is the darkest, and then I'm gonna slowly kind of spread it down to some of the darker areas down here. And then I'm gonna flip my brush over to the fluffier side, and I'm just gonna very gently spread that color around, because again, I've got darkness all underneath my eyes. It's most concentrated in the corner, which is where I want to put most of the DEMI color, but then I can use this fluffier side to soften it up in that corner and also to kind of spread it and disperse it around where I have darkness in the other areas of my under eye. And now you can already see a huge difference between my two under eyes. This one where I've placed the DEMI corrector, I've been able to neutralize that darkness and the excess blue that was there and brighten up that whole area. Whereas this side where I have nothing there, you can still see that darkness and it just kind of makes my eyes look more withdrawn. Whereas this one kind of opens them up and makes them pop a little bit more. Now, in contrast to how I applied the DEMI corrector underneath my eye, I'm going to apply the DEMI corrector where these melasma spots are a little bit differently. So when you have an area like these melasma spots that I have that are very concentrated but also very small, there are two things that you need to make sure that you do with your DEMI application. The first one is you need to make sure that you pick up as little product as possible. I'm talking about barely dipping into your product, so there's just a tiny, tiny, tiny amount on the very tip of it. The second thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that when you place the DEMI corrector on that spot, that it is concentrated on the spot only and it doesn't go outside of the parameters of it, because if it does go outside the parameters of it, it's almost gonna create a halo effect and it's gonna accentuate that area in a different way, but not in a good way. So I've put a tiny, tiny amount of product on my brush, and now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna go into the very center of that spot and tap ever so gently so you can see where the color is being distributed. And even then I might have a little bit too much product on my brush because like I said, you want as little as possible. And I'm using the pointed end because I need that pinpoint precision to be able to address this area. And as you can see, it's kind of concentrated in the center. You can still see some of that color around it. But instead of flipping my brush over and kind of trying to spread it out there, because then it's gonna make it go outside of the parameters, instead, I'm just gonna take like my pinky, I'm just gonna very gently press that area. And that kind of helps to make the product spread out a little bit, but keeps it in the same concentrated area, if that makes sense. But as you can see that by doing that, that melasma spot that was right here has essentially disappeared. And then I can just do the same thing. Usually I don't even have to re-dip into my brush because there's still a little bit of residual product there. And I can tap on to the center of this next melasma spot and do the same things. Just kind of focus on the parameter and the center of that melasma spot, and then make sure that I'm getting just enough product, and then again, just using my finger to gently press it in so that that way the color kind of disperses into the area but doesn't go outside of where that pigment is. And now, as you can see, I've been able to essentially erase those melasma spots by using Demi correctors in that area. So I wanted to demonstrate how I apply Demi differently to different areas of my skin, just so you can see that Demi is something that you have to kind of cater to the area and the needs of your skin. So as you're learning to use Demi, just remember to pay attention to how you're applying it and the needs of the area, and don't be afraid to switch it up a little bit. More often than not, I find that when people are struggling with Demi, it has more to do with their application than it does with the colors. Even though their natural instinct is to blame it on being the wrong shade, more often than not, it's just that they either have the wrong tool or they're just not applying it correctly. And a lot of that is going to come with practice and patience, because Demi, like I said, does take some time to really learn and master. So hopefully this is helpful for those of you that are just getting started on your Demi journey. And for those of you that haven't started yet but you're interested in learning more, I'm going to go ahead and link up some information about Demi correctors just to give you a better overview of what they are and how they work. I'm also going to link a video that I did that just kind of does a little bit more of a deep dive into what Demi correctors are. I also showed a little bit more about how I color correct underneath my eyes using the Demi correctors. And to simplify things, Seint has even put together some collections. They're called Demi Edits, and each one has kind of been curated to address specific areas. So they have one for under eyes, they have one for like age spots and melasma and things like that, and then they have one that's specific for blemishes and acne. And so if you have specific needs in either of those areas, then you can grab one of these collections. If you are just wanting to get started with Demi in general, you can also grab one of these collections if you are somebody who kind of falls in the fair to medium tan skin tone range. Then the Wide Awake Edit, which is the one for under eyes, is actually great for getting started with because it has stuff in it that can address some other problem areas, not just under eyes. And then same thing if you have darker skin tone and you want something that's a little bit more universal, then I would recommend starting with the Rewind Edit, which is the one that deals with melasma and age spots and things like that, because it also has ones that are great for other areas too if you have darker skin. So I will link up the Demi collection edits because they are a great place to get started with Demi. And then I'll also link up a compact, because you're going to want one of those to place your Demi edits in, as well as the brushes that I recommend getting started with, the spot brush in particular, because like I said, it's really important that you have the right tools for applying Demi with. And last but not least, if you are interested in the business side of Seint, so that's kind of like what I do here as an artist with Seint, I will link up some information about the Seint Artist Program for you to take a look at. And if you decide it's something that you are interested in, I would love to chat with you more about it. Or if you are just ready to dive in, I would absolutely love to have you join my team and mentor you here in Seint.